In a chilling moment of betrayal and power struggles, Ibrahim Traoré, the man who was once hailed as a leader of a nation, met his untimely and brutal end, assassinated at his desk in the heart of the presidential palace, while 200 of his bodyguards stood helplessly watching. It was a quiet afternoon in the presidential palace, an air of calm lingering within the walls of the grand building, the kind of silence that only the most powerful in the country could enjoy, knowing their security was unmatched. But beneath that facade of peace, a storm was brewing, an ominous plot that no one could have predicted. Ibrahim Traoré, the man at the center of this unfolding tragedy, sat at his desk in his office, completely unaware that this day would be his last. Outside, a fresh breeze fluttered through the grand palace gardens, carrying whispers of discontent and growing unrest. The leader, who had made bold decisions and shaped the nation's future, was about to become a victim of the very forces he once controlled. As he worked, surrounded by confidential documents, his mind was focused on an impending diplomatic visit, a moment to cement his leadership on the global stage. But something darker was at play. Little did he know. Betrayal was in the air, betrayal that would cut short his reign in the most shocking way possible. The guards positioned all around the palace maintained their usual watch. They had sworn an oath to protect, to shield their president at all costs. Yet, in that moment, something had shifted. They stood there, staring at their monitors, chatting amongst themselves, their sharp instincts dulled by routine. Ibrahim's bodyguards, numbering 200 in total, had been trained for scenarios no one could imagine. Riots, terror attacks, assassination attempts. But this was a new kind of danger. The palace was a fortress, but it was not immune to the whims of those who sought to destroy it from within. There were murmurs of dissent among the ranks factions, growing restless with the president's policies, whispers of betrayal creeping through the corridors. As the day wore on, the sense of unease was palpable, but no one knew it would come to this. The clock on the wall ticked away, with an unsettling rhythm. Ibrahim Traoré's eyes flicked from one document to the next, his mind fully engaged in the work at hand. He never saw the shift in the air around him. The palace staff continued their usual duties, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. Among them, a small group of conspirators, disguised as ordinary servants and aides, had planned this moment meticulously. They had been watching him for weeks, learning his routines, studying his patterns. They knew exactly when he would be alone, when the guards would be distracted, and when the moment was right to strike. They had found their opening, and with it, the promise of a future where they would rise to power. But their plot had one final twist, and unexpected: betrayal from within their own ranks. As Ibrahim leaned back in his chair, reviewing a letter from an international ally, the room's atmosphere seemed to change. The doors to his office remained shut, the guards outside unaware of what was about to unfold. The conspirators, moving swiftly and silently, made their way through the hidden passageways of the palace, their hearts racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. With a single, coordinated motion, they executed their plan. The first shot rang out, loud and sudden. Ibrahim's bodyguards, though nearby, were too slow to react. In the chaos that followed, the traitors moved in quickly, surrounding their target. The president, still in shock, had no time to defend himself. The powerful man who had once commanded an army, who had led the country through turbulent times, was now powerless in the face of the ultimate betrayal. The palace erupted into confusion. The silence that had once dominated the halls was shattered by the sound of frantic footsteps and urgent commands. The bodyguards, scrambling to react, were too late. The assassins had already achieved their goal. But it wasn't just the immediate shock of the attack that was unsettling. It was the fact that 200 bodyguards had failed to stop it. How could this happen? How could they have let their president fall right in front of them without even raising a hand in defense? As the news of the assassination spread like wildfire, the country was thrown into a state of disbelief. Who could have orchestrated such a cold and calculated act? Who had the power to infiltrate the palace so thoroughly, to break through the security that had once been considered impenetrable? The answers were elusive, and in the days that followed, the nation would be forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that Betrayal had taken root within its own walls. In the aftermath of the assassination, the country was left to pick up the pieces. Ibrahim Traoré's death sent shockwaves through the political landscape, leaving a void that no one was prepared to fill. The conspirators, who had orchestrated the plot, vanished into the shadows, their identities hidden behind layers of deception. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the assassination was not just a random act of violence. It was the culmination of months of planning. The final move in a deadly game of power. Bodyguards who had failed to protect. Their leader were interrogated. Their loyalty questioned. Some were taken into custody, while others disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The nation demanded answers, but the truth was far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Was it an inside job? Were there factions within the government that sought to overthrow the president? And, most disturbingly, could someone in the president's own circle have been responsible for his death? As the investigation deepened, the scope of the conspiracy began to unfold. The bodyguards who had failed to act were not the only ones under scrutiny. High-ranking officials, once close allies of Ibrahim, were now seen as potential suspects. The plot had involved many layers, each one more shocking than the last. One by one, the web of betrayal unraveled, revealing a network of corruption and ambition that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. What began as a political assassination had quickly become a tale of power, greed, and broken trust. The country's leadership was now in disarray, with factions fighting for control, each one trying to claim Ibrahim's legacy as their own. The question on everyone's mind was simple: who would rise to power in the wake of his death? And would they be able to restore the stability that had been lost in the wake of such a violent and public betrayal? In the days following the assassination, the media was flooded with stories, speculations, and theories about what had truly happened. Some believed that Ibrahim's death was part of a larger regional plot, a way to destabilize the nation and weaken its position on the world stage. Others pointed fingers at his closest advisors, suggesting that the assassination was the result of internal power struggles. Theories ranged from the plausible to the absurd, but none of them offered concrete answers. What was undeniable, however, was the sense of fear that had gripped the nation. With the president gone, the country was vulnerable. The military, once a symbol of strength and unity, now appeared fractured and uncertain. The population, who had once rallied behind Ibrahim's leadership, now found themselves questioning everything. In the face of such a shocking betrayal, how could they trust their leaders again? As the weeks passed, the investigation continued, but the answers remained elusive. The conspirators, it seemed, had covered their tracks with remarkable precision, even with the vast resources at their disposal. Investigators struggled to find concrete evidence that would lead to the perpetrators. It was as if they were ghosts, fading into the shadows before anyone could catch them. And yet the mystery only deepened. Whispers of a larger, more complex conspiracy began to surface, suggestions that the assassination was not just a power grab, but part of a larger movement. Some believed that Ibrahim's leadership had been seen as a threat by powerful international forces who had played a role in his demise. Others suspected that the attack was part of a larger plan to destabilize the entire region. But with each new theory came more questions and fewer answers. As the search for the truth grew more desperate, Ibrahim's family and closest allies were left to mourn his loss. In private, they grappled with the weight of his death. They had lost not just a president, but a man who had once been a symbol of hope for the future. Ibrahim's legacy, which had been so carefully crafted over the years, was now shrouded in mystery and suspicion. But as his family mourned, they also vowed to uncover the truth. They believed that the assassination had to be a part of something larger, a carefully planned operation that had been set in motion long before the fateful day. Determined to honor Ibrahim's memory and to protect the future of the nation, they vowed to continue the fight for justice, no matter the cost. In the midst of the chaos, the world watched as the nation tried to piece itself back together. International leaders, once allies of Ibrahim, now found themselves walking a fine line. They had to navigate the delicate balance of offering condolences without appearing to meddle in the country's internal affairs. Some saw the assassination as a sign of impending instability in the region, while others saw an opportunity to shift alliances. The delicate political landscape became a chessboard, with every move scrutinized and every decision weighed against its potential consequences. The country was at a crossroads. The loss of Ibrahim Traoré left a power vacuum that threatened to send the nation into further chaos. His leadership had been a beacon of strength, but without him, no one was sure who could fill his shoes. As the political factions began to rise to the forefront, each with their own agenda, the nation was left holding its breath, unsure of what would happen next. Despite the political upheaval, there were whispers of a resistance forming. Small groups, led by loyalists to the fallen president, began to organize in secret. They knew that without Ibrahim's vision, the country could spiral into anarchy. These individuals, many of them former high-ranking officials and military officers, were determined to restore the nation's strength and keep it from falling into the hands of those who had betrayed their leader. The resistance worked in the shadows, carefully plotting their next moves. They knew they had to be patient, that making a wrong move could be disastrous. But with every passing day, their resolve grew stronger. They believed that the truth would eventually come to light, and when it did, they would be ready to ensure that those responsible for Ibrahim's assassination paid the ultimate price. As the conspiracy began to unravel, more revelations came to light. It became clear that Ibrahim's enemies had been plotting against him for months, even years. The betrayal had been in the making long. Before that fateful afternoon in the presidential palace, some speculated that it wasn't just internal forces at play. Outside, powers had also been pulling strings, manipulating events from behind the scenes. The investigation into Ibrahim's assassination revealed a tangled web of international intrigue, one that stretched far beyond the country's borders. In a shocking twist, it was revealed that certain foreign governments had been in contact with some of Ibrahim's most trusted allies, offering them support in exchange for allegiance. The idea that foreign powers had played a role in his death sent shockwaves through the nation, fueling even more anger and distrust among the people. It was clear that this wasn't just a national tragedy, it was a global one. As the resistance began to gain traction, they realized they could not act alone. They reached out to allies in other nations, hoping to form a coalition that could challenge the forces that had led to Ibrahim's assassination. The world watched as tensions mounted, with the potential for conflict on the horizon. Could the resistance overcome the internal factions vying for control of the country? Or would the shadowy figures who had orchestrated the assassination maintain their grip on power? The fight for justice was not just about revenge. It was about securing the future of the nation, restoring its integrity, and ensuring that Ibrahim's vision for a better tomorrow did not die with him. But the road to justice was fraught with danger, and the odds were stacked against them. The conspiracy ran deeper than anyone could have imagined, and it would take all of their strength and cunning to bring those responsible to justice. As time went on, the nation began to heal, but the scars of Ibrahim's assassination remained. The political factions that had fought for control slowly began to come together, realizing that unity was the only way forward. The conspiracy, though not fully unraveled, was no longer the driving force of the nation's unrest. The people had begun to rebuild, but the questions remained: who were the masterminds behind Ibrahim's death? And why had they chosen to strike when they did? As the years passed, Ibrahim's legacy lived on. Statues were erected in his honor, schools taught his story, and his ideals became the foundation for a new generation of leaders. But the truth behind his assassination, though it had been partially uncovered, was never fully revealed. The nation moved forward, but the haunting question lingered in the back of everyone's mind. What really happened that day in the presidential palace? In the final reflection of Ibrahim Traoré's life, one thing became crystal clear: his death, though tragic, was a catalyst for change. It sparked a movement that no one could have predicted, a movement that forever altered the course of history. The assassination of a leader so powerful, so beloved by the people, showed just how fragile power truly is. As the nation continued to rebuild, Ibrahim's vision for a peaceful, prosperous future remained a guiding light, even if his physical presence was gone. His death may have been the beginning of a new chapter in the country's story, but it also served as a stark reminder that power, no matter how secure it seems, can be taken away in the blink of an eye. The search for justice, for truth, and for a better future was far from over. This story is purely for entertainment purposes and has no connection to any real person, event, or situation. Everything is fictional and presented only as a satire or story. If you found this story fascinating and want to stay informed on the latest investigations, historical events, and gripping tales of power, betrayal, and justice, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join our community and let's uncover the truth together. Don't miss out, subscribe now.